Welcome to the Legal Leaders Podcast with Ollie Rock. Bradley Krack is a partner at Gunderson Dettmer in Silicon Valley. Brad's a former engineer and submarine officer specializing in guiding high-growth tech companies through complex deals. Brad just crossed his 13th year with Gunderson, where he represents companies in their financings, IPOs, and M&A transactions. His experience spans a variety of technology firms, including consumer internet, software, financial, and entertainment, as well as venture capital firms. I hope you enjoy the episode as we discuss the value of hard work, discipline, and managing client relationships. Hey, Brad, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
I am super excited to dive into your career. I mean, you've traveled the world, you've been in the Navy, and now you work with some of the top emerging companies and startups sort of all over the world, but focus on Latin America at Gunderson. So before we jump in, I would love to start things off with a quick icebreaker. So if you could do any job, not including the military or being a lawyer, what would it be and why?
I think I'd probably be a professor. I think that was kind of the track I was on before joining the Navy. So I always wonder what if I was doing that, being a researcher still.
Amazing. What class would you teach?
I would probably teach like physics and engineering type stuff.
Nice.
Yeah.
Amazing. Cool. Well, I'd love to sort of talk about your career. It's really impressive what you've done. You went to Mission High School in San Jose, and then you went to Northwestern to do your bachelor's and your master's. So I'm curious because you had quite a big gap between the time you finished your master's and when you went to law school. Mm-hmm. At what point did you know you wanted to pursue your JD?
It was kind of later. One clarification, Mission San Jose is actually Fremont, which is confusing. The Mission San Jose, Fremont, but just in case any Fremont listeners are on here, we got to clarify that, clear the air. But so in all seriousness, so I decided to go to law school probably, as I was in my last year or so in the Navy. I was in Hawaii, kind of in a somewhat of a so-called chill job in the Navy and had more time to think about my life. So one of my best friends growing up went to high school with at Mission San Jose. Actually, he was a lawyer. He was a few years ahead of me, and he had gone to law school. And I was talking to him, and he knew me pretty well. So he's like, yeah, you should look into this. I think you might like it. So yeah.
And that was when you were in the Navy?
Mm-hmm.
Nice. And so you got your master's, you went to the Navy for 6 years, and I was listening to another one of the podcasts you were on, and you said you were underwater for about half the time of those 6 years that you were in the Navy. Is that correct?
It was about half the time I was on a submarine, which was a fraction of the 6 years. It was about 3 or so years of that time.
Gotcha.
We spent a lot of time underwater.
Nice. And so what did the LSAT journey look like for you? Were you doing that while you were on the submarine, or did you come back and start studying for that?
Yeah, I took a course in lovely Honolulu, Hawaii, one of those LSAT prep classes, and
Nice.
Studied there.
Was Berkeley sort of where you wanted to end up?
Yeah, I was. About back in, I think it still is, but yeah, my high school was a big feeder to Berkeley, and I always wondered, what if I went to Berkeley versus, I kind of wanted to see the world, so called, by going to Chicago, but because I hadn't really traveled much through high school, so I always wanted to return to the Bay Area. It'd been about a decade.
Gotcha.
So yeah, family's still here.
Nice. Did you know what sort of law you wanted to practice?
No, I think, it was, there was a lot of choices. I think I'd been kind of pegged early on by some of my professors as a potential prosecutor for various reasons. Not really political, but more my approach to things. And I did, some clinics, some human rights law clinic at Berkeley, which I highly recommend. And thought about that. Also thought, patent litigation obviously is something that, since I had an engineering background, something I could have done. Patent prosecution I was not that interested in. I was pretty open-minded, actually. I didn't know really what I wanted to do, but
Amazing. And
Yeah.
so how was that journey to Gunderson? Did you get the associate position from OCI?
hmm Yeah, I did. Yeah, I interviewed. This was right after the 2008. My 1L year was 2008. Economy was not looking good for a while, and for law school hiring. And the class of 2010 ahead of me, I think had a lot rougher time, but it was really hard to find positions, summer associate positions. And I remember, spending a lot of sweaty days at Hotel Durant in Berkeley, meeting people in very small hotel rooms. Yeah, but I met some folks from Gunderson there, and ended up summering there. So.
Amazing. Cool. And what was that journey like when you first started as an associate at Gunderson? How was that learning curve?
It was pretty tough, I think. Yeah, but back in those days, I think our firm it was small. We had, very small summer classes, so there were a lot of opportunities where a lot of people. You were one of the, 5 people summering that summer, so everyone knew you, and it was not, you weren't like a faceless person. Not that you are now, but it was a smaller time, and so I think had a lot of opportunities to work with a lot of different people and be thrown into large complex deals and learn a lot. Yeah, it was a pretty steep learning curve, I would say.
What sort of
Yeah.
advice would you give to folks who are interviewing that maybe can set themselves apart other than sort of the table stakes of, really focusing on grades and sort of
Mhm.
networking? What sort of advice would you share on that front?
Yeah, having a good, why answer to the why. Why do you want to do what you're doing? And I think, in my practice area, I think that it goes through boom bust cycles of popularity with law students, and so, kind of during the boom cycles, there's people that don't necessarily always know why they're getting into it, and then when the investment when there's a down cycle and the investment turns is not as active, I think some of those people wash out. So I think, I think we're still kind of, a lot of firms are looking for people that really have an interest in the practice, and really, you don't have to have any sort of specific, work or study background, but I think having a real good answer to that question of why
Yeah,
you want
and
to
that
do
can
it.
vary for a lot of people, right? So, like, do you have any advice on sort of how to find that why? Like, for me, it's like I know I'm passionate about working with clients and building
Mm-hmm.
relationships, but I know there's a lot of folks that, maybe come to law school and they're not exactly sure. So, what's like the best way to explore sort of what folks' passion is or what their why might be?
Yeah, I think it's trying to get involved in some practical way with something that's somewhat related with that, such as a clinic, like a new business. I think I forget what the clinic's called at Berkeley, but I think there's a business law clinic. There's, I think, a lot more opportunities to volunteer and get involved, on campus with startup related activities. So I think getting your hands dirty and involved, and I think you'll would go a long way.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And Brad, I want to ask you about the age. So I know you were a little bit older when you were at
Mhm.
school. What were some of the benefits or maybe disadvantages to sort of having more real life experience?
Yeah, I think spending 2 months at a time underwater gave me a little bit of perspective about studying for exams, or working hard and not being able to go out and have fun for a period. I think that was a good perspective. But on the other hand, I think it was less. I think for in some respects, law school can be sort of have a continuity with undergrad in terms of social activities and all the things. And so it was a little, I was coming off of out of a different place, and college had been, a long time in the past. So it took me some, time to acclimate, I guess I would say.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And I know you just talked about your time on the submarine. I was listening to you have this discussion with someone else, and you mentioned
Mhm.
that you were doing 18-hour shifts, right? And it was sort of 6 hours on, 6 hours off. Is that how it was?
Yeah, I think that the Navy has subsequently changed this because research has shown and experience has shown that it's not good for the human body. But we lived on 18-hour days, so our cycle, the day cycle would be 18 hours. So you would be on watch or on a shift, like on the ships driving the boat, or doing something in the engineering space for 6 hours, and then you would have admin, training, other things for another 6, and then they have another theoretical 6 of downtime or sleep time.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
it was hard to, you have to wake up at a different 6 hour, you'd be 6 hours off every time you woke up. So I would take a case of Diet Red Bull with me to see, to
Yeah. I
wake
mean,
up
I
every
would
morning.
imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, that your level of discipline was quite high when you were in law school.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, but at times it goes both ways. I think if you having worked on doing those sorts of things in the Navy, I'm kind of like, does this matter too much? I don't know. But it goes both ways. But yeah, it helped if I think.
Nice. Cool. Well, you've spent a lot of time at Gunderson. Obviously, you're just past your 13-year mark. Congratulations
Yeah.
on that.
Wow.
Um,
Who would have thought?
no, it's really impressive. I mean, just over 10 years as an associate. I want to know, like, what was life like as a first-year associate? What kinds of things were you working on? Did you have a mentor? And, how was sort of that learning curve?
Wow, that was a long time ago, so I'm probably completely fabricating my history here. But but I think it was. Yeah, I think it was. I think thinking back, I feel like I was treating it as a sort of an apprenticeship, right? Like I was approaching to joining the Navy. I'm like, hey, I'm all in here. People say, do you want to do this? I'm going to say yes. Let's just throw yourself in there and learn as much as possible. So I think that served me well. Although I think yeah. What else? Yeah, I had some good mentors. We had a formal mentorship program, and as well as just kind of informal mentors at the firm that partners, associates that I worked frequently with that I learned a lot from. But yeah, I think
Yeah.
I think my view is nice little kind of tell new folks at the firm this the same as I think it's kind of just throwing yourself in there and saying yes and trying to find how you can try to insert yourself into things as much as you can just to helps facilitate the learning process.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds like it was it can be challenging, but you also kind of have to make the effort to be proactive
Mhm.
and really put yourself out there. How did things change as you sort of progressed as an associate?
Yeah, I think I'm sure it's similar in different practice areas, but I think as you progress at some point, I think you continue to do some of the same fundamental things you did, but then also kind of manage deals or have people working with you, and then yeah, I think it. Yeah, you learn a little bit of management. You also get the kind of mid junior, like 3 years in or so. I think people tend to get a little burned out because then they're like, hey, I'm trying to scale this, but it's hard to, and I think it takes time. Yeah, it's you're taking on, you're doing more and more work, but then you're doing more and more other things too, and it's not really, it's not an AI or a bot that's doing all your work for you. At some point, maybe it will be, but yeah, there's still, yeah, the work kept increasing. I felt like.
Yeah, no, it sounds good. And what about in terms of how you were client facing? I'm sure it was probably a little bit less initially, but
Mhm.
at what point were you starting to really sort of run the deals yourself and be like the quarterback?
I remember pretty vividly running like a pretty complicated M&A deal as like a fourth year or something. Just it was by virtue of the client and that I had a good relationship with and the partner that I worked a lot with. But I think, yeah, just throwing yourself in there as much as possible, believing in yourself, faking it till you make it. All those things are true, I think. But yeah, it just takes a lot of time to learn how the stuff and have the confidence. I think some people come into the job with different, skills and different, strengths and weaknesses. And some people come in very, having, worked in, I don't know, government or other things where you're very good at working or speaking to very senior or powerful people, and it doesn't faze them. Whereas other people, they'd be very happy just kind of working away in the background and never interacting via email or on the phone with the client. So I think it kind of depends on the person, their personality, their experiences, their strengths and weaknesses. But I think the more you kind of just throw yourself out there and give it a shot, I think the more opportunities you'll have for that.
Gotcha. And I'm curious, what's your favorite part about being a transactional lawyer?
It's all about the relationships. I think people say that all the time, but I think building, becoming a trusted advisor to clients, who, being the person they call, not just being the technician, but being relied upon and trusted for your business judgment and your experience and just in generally in business, rather than purely, what is the right legalese for this provision.
Yeah. And just going off that point on the flip side of things, I want to ask, how do you tell a client no if either you think something's not in their best interest or it's just something that doesn't make sense? What's the best way to go about doing something like that?
Yeah, I think it's highly, function of the person you're talking to and the issue, but I think you have to take into account them and how they react to things and what works for them, communicating with them and with what not, and then kind of having a series of different arguments. Some being, legally this is an argument, but the legal argument isn't always the first one. It's like relationships. It's like how are your stakeholders going to react to this? What, how do we do the right thing and show them kind of the long-term, implications, not just like, here, you could do this or you could not do that legally. And then, just connecting with the person at a personal level and, being honest, being yourself and finding a way for them to be that as well. I think.
Love that.
Yeah.
And I want to shift a little bit to ask you about teamwork. I know in a lot of these deals, you might be working with other partners, with associates, or maybe with people across the aisle from you. So can you speak to the importance of teamwork and how you can sort of be a good team player when you're working with so many different types of people?
Yeah, I think, it's over communication, I think is important. Getting to know the people you're working with in a way that different, separate and apart from just the hey, please handle this, or can you do this, or what you're, the more it's hard. I think it's becoming harder and harder in law and business in the world as we are today, with people being in different locations and all that. But, to the extent you can, we just had an offsite or a hike in Wyoming last weekend and got to spend time with people I work a lot with. And we didn't talk about work at all, but I feel like that helps build trust and good relationships. It helps people work together. But yeah, I think you have to balance a lot of time zones, know where people are, know when they go to bed. I know people's sleep cycle is probably better than my wife's sleep cycle. Things like that. Just using all forms of communication. Yeah.
Because you're doing deals worldwide, right? With this focus in Latin America. So how does that work?
Yeah, so I work with folks here in the Bay Area on my team, in New York, also in Brazil. So it's not a huge range, but 1 to 5 hour time difference. So it's something to keep in mind. It works well as long as we're aware who has the football, I guess, at a certain time of night or day.
And can you give me an idea of what the deal cycle typically looks like? Does it just vary a lot, or is there sort of like a time range that you could give on how long deals typically take?
I think for venture financings, they take a month or so, a month to 2 months, depending on jurisdiction, the type of transaction, the complexity. But and then M&A, I don't know, it depends. Yeah, but yeah, mostly do venture work, so yeah, it's pretty
Gotcha. And
reasonably reliable to predict. Yeah.
for folks who are thinking about, doing transactional work, what would you say are some of the pros that are working with emerging companies and startups versus maybe the Fortune 100 or the Fortune 500?
Yeah, I think you get a lot more client contact is the key term that we all use. But I think you work with a guy who just may have just sold his company for or girl who sold her company for $1 billion and is starting a new company, and it's just them and you're working together to help start a new thing, and so you get to work with some really interesting people. Yeah, so I think that's the cool part of it. I mean, you work with the large companies. I mean, there's cool stuff in that too, and that there's the work can be more sophisticated and complex, and but then could be potentially dealing with large legal teams, and so you may feel a little bit more of potentially a cog in the system to some extent, but. Yeah, I think the pro is just the flexibility, the freedom. When you work with startups as well, you're not saddled necessarily with like an institutional relationship that's been going on for decades necessarily. It's you can build a portfolio of clients. You can kind of decide to specialize, and that's something you can more readily do. You can do things that you feel within your practice area at least that you want to do, and work with the people you want to work with, and spend time with those you want to spend time with. So it's
Nice.
cool. Yeah.
I think the thing that is most exciting for me to hear is how you're just working with the same founder repeatedly. So you're just building on that relationship and building the trust, and it's just going to go so much further than just one transaction. Can you speak a little bit more to that?
Yeah. So not only within a single company's life cycle, which can be 5, 10 plus years. I've had been lucky enough to work with founders that have started companies, left companies, started new companies. It's really fun to do that and to see it's kind of their baby, and you get to help them. It's a very special kind of opportunity.
Awesome, Brad. So that's really great to hear. I am curious. So you made the partnership after about 10 years. So I'm curious. First of all, what did that feel like?
A long time. No, yeah, it felt good. I think it was in 2021 when I made partner. That was a very intense year of a lot of there was the pandemic backdrop, so I was working from home mostly, also working a lot. So it was just an insane amount of work for everyone across the firm, and me in particular. Latin America also simultaneously booming with the macro boom in venture. So it was a cool ride. It was, I mean, from a market timing perspective, it was good for me to make a partner then. That timing matters, as people will hear and say. But yeah, no, I really appreciate Gunderson, and that's why I've stayed here so long. It's been a great platform and a very supportive organization for my career. So happy to be.
Love to hear that. Yeah, in our past conversations, you've always spoken so highly of Gunderson, especially about the training and all the clients you get to work with. As you're getting, more senior as an associate, what types of things should you be thinking about when you're sort of approaching, candidacy for partnership?
Yeah, I guess I can speak as a corporate attorney. I think, I think it's kind of there are boxes you have to check. Obviously, it's like, is this person good with clients? Are they trusted as the partner by their clients? Do their clients look to them for even the most complicated things? That's kind of table stakes. How do you business development is important. I think it's always important. I think at Gunderson, and fortunately, I think in this practice area, you can get a lot of opportunities and experience in doing that from an early standpoint in your career. Yeah, it's kind of it's law firms are interesting creatures. They're partnerships, and so there's a lot of it's very consensus driven, and so I think people for you coming from a company, it's a very different animal, and so it can be frustrating because you're like, well, everyone I know loves me, but it's a consensus, so you have to. It's like I need to make everyone not love me, So it's hard to it's a tough, it's sort of a whack-a-mole game at times, but yeah, it's good. It's a good. It's great being a partner. I really enjoy. I have great partners at Gunderson, and yeah.
Yeah. So you're coming up on 3 years as a partner. I mean, I'm curious about what's changed the most. Is it more focus on business development?
Yeah, I think there's more focus on that, managing the client relationship. Obviously there's a lot of it's a business, right? It's a pretty simple business. So you have clients and you do work for them and charge them for the work. But yeah, managing that, the billing and collections relationship with clients. Training folks, hiring folks. We're pretty active in kind of, the practice in the Latin American practice. We kind of have our own group to some extent within the corporate group, and so our hiring needs a little bit different from other just kind of general corporate teams. It's hard to hire for our practice because we're looking for people with venture experience, U.S. legal training, knowledge and interest in Latin America, language skills, visas. It's like a massive kind of Venn diagram that it's hard to.
It's extremely niche.
hard to satisfy all those requirements. So yeah, we're always hiring for that reason. Just always kind of looking for good candidates.
Nice. I'm just for my own curiosity, what is the Silicon Valley of the Latin American market?
So the two biggest hubs would be Sao Paulo in Brazil, and then Mexico City for Spanish-speaking markets.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And are you traveling to those places often?
Yeah, pretty frequently. I was actually just I was just signing up for events in October. I'm going to Mexico City. It's a tech week in October.
Nice.
Just like there's one here, kind of in San Francisco and different cities in the U.S. Coming up. But yeah, we're sponsoring an event with a venture fund there. It's gonna be cool. We're gonna go to the Michelin Guide just published, just released stars for Mexico City for the first time this year. So we're gonna do like a little crawl between some Michelin restaurants with founders and some investors.
Wow. Not bad places to visit on business.
Not bad, not too bad. Yeah.
So, Brad, what anything else you can share? Advice for your younger self, young associates, folks just graduating law school, trying to get into big law. What would you tell your younger self that could be helpful?
Yeah, I would just say, stay curious about the world, maintain your hobbies, make yourself, stay interested in the world, and keep learning and doing other things besides work, I think is really important.
Gotcha.
For it to have like a long-term career, to be happy, to be, it's a marathon, definitely.
And how do you keep that balance yourself? Like what sorts of things outside of work, your family, other hobbies, how do you achieve that balance?
Yeah. I have a group of friends. We get up at, they come over to my house every morning at 5:30, and I open the garage doors in the darkness, and we all get a lift together every morning. So that's one thing. Just have a very religious discipline about getting up and working out, and it's good things, social, having maintain, all the good things people say about exercise, social connections, for longevity, brain health. Everybody's interested in that, but that's true for me. And then just being involved in my kids' lives. They play a lot of sports, and try to be as active as I can in spend as much time with them as I can while they still want to hang out with me.
Love it.
Yeah.
Awesome, Brad. Well, I really enjoyed the podcast. Thanks for sharing more about your career. It was really interesting learning about some of the work you've done.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited for you and your journey in Berkeley, and hope you enjoy it. And
Awesome. Thanks so much.